I'd like to introduce to you Mr. Jay Cimino. He was born in Trinidad, Colorado, and spent his high school years at Holy Trinity Parochial School. After graduating in 1954, Mr. Cimino joined the Marine Corps. And after the Marine Corps, he attended Trinidad State Junior College. From there, he attended the University of Denver, graduating on the Dean's List in 1960 with a bachelor's degree in business administration. And immediately after graduating, married his lovely wife, Emily. So, Emily, thank you for being here with us today. Very happy to have you. And by the way, Emily, a little bit here, graduated as her valedictorian of her class. So how about that? Congratulations. Yes. In 1975, am I correct, he was recruited, if I'm not mistaken, by Mr. Phil Long, and Jay joined the Phil Long Ford organization. And this has ultimately led to his being their president and CEO of the Phil Long family of dealerships. And their visions, of course, here in town, they've been here quite a while, their visions, commitment to the community, quality customer service, and exceptional value. We threw that in for you. And additionally, the dealerships and their contacts have spread throughout our community in many, many and varied ways. And so thank you for all that you've done for our community. And Jay's philanthropic efforts have often gone unnoticed, but as recent as last year, 2013, he was selected as Humanitarian of the Year by the Pikes Peak Chapter of the American Red Cross, again, 2013. So thank you for being here with us. I'd also like to now introduce, we have Angela Ann, who will also present a little information here regarding her friend, Jay. Okay.
Good afternoon, and welcome to Pillars Behind an Icon series. I'm Angela Ann Cesario, and I'm a member of the Board of Directors of Pillar, and very happy to be of service to this wonderful organization. Today, it's my great pleasure and honor to introduce to you a man who is not only a leader in his community, but also known in Denver, along the Front Range, and most especially in Trinidad. He is also a dear friend whom I have known since we were 5 years old. We were classmates graduating from Holy Trinity High School in Trinidad together, and we have kept in touch throughout the years while we both went far afield from Trinidad. I am also fortunate to be a schoolmate and friend of his lovely wife, Emily, who, if the truth be known, is not only the power behind the throne, but also the brains of the outfit. Through these 70-plus years of friendship, I have seen Jay grow from an ornery prankster who led the nuns of Mary Chase to the successful businessman and philanthropist he is today. While I have always been a fan of Jay's, my admiration for him has taken on a new dimension in these past 10 years as I have become involved in some of his philanthropic projects. He is a salesman par excellence with a keen ability to read and motivate people and a loyalty to his friends and employees that is unsurpassed. I'm not telling you that he isn't a pain in the patootie sometimes, especially when he changes his mind for the 5th time or comes in on a Monday morning with an idea to rearrange an already agreed upon plan yet again. After all, why do you think his lovely wife Emily has earned the sobriquet of Saint Emily? And he has a tendency to pontificate. You might hear that today. But all in all, warts and all, he's a pretty terrific guy. Ladies and gentlemen, the president and CEO of the Phil Long dealerships, Mr. Jay Cimino.
Well, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. All these women. Are there any men here? Oh, there's. Hey, we got a couple men. When Angela asked me to speak to this wonderful group, I had a couple questions. One is, what do you want me to talk about? And you know, because I'm capable of speaking about cars. I could talk about cars, and I could talk a little bit about business, and there's a few other subject matters that I could talk about. The one I'm not capable of talking about very well is me. So she says, well, I want you to talk about yourself. I don't want to talk about me, but I had that confirmed. So in deciding that I was going to be here, I thought I better conform or I'm in trouble. So you're going to find this, I'm going to muddle through this thing talking about me. I want you to know that it's not fun. I don't enjoy it, but I'm going to try. Okay? And if you find that I'm off track somewhere, just raise your hand and say, hey, wait a minute, you're off track. It's okay. Well, first of all, I must confess I've never, as a human being, I've never been driven by money. And I know that you'll find that odd coming from a car dealer, right? Okay. But Emily can tell you, I've never been driven by money. I've always believed if you follow your passion, the money will come. I live by the 5 Ps. Absolutely live by the 5 Ps. And the 5 Ps in our organization and what I teach and what we really work on starts with people. People first always. And people in our business, or any business for that matter, with passion. You can't hire someone who doesn't have passion. If you do, you really aren't getting anywhere. The train doesn't run very fast with people without passion. But the thing we have to supply those people with, if we want to maintain that passion, are processes. And so we're very strong in our organization of processes, learning processes, continue to train processes, et cetera, et cetera. This is not new to a lot of you, to all of you. You all know that. It's pretty basic. The final, or not the final P, but the fourth P is what I call product. And a lot of people think when I say that, that means Ford or Chevy or something else. It does not. What I sell is a byproduct. The product is me. The sum total of the person with passion, driven by processes, is me. I'm the product. And the fifth P is profit. Isn't that unusual? How many times will you find a businessman talking about profit last rather than first? We really live by that. As a matter of fact, and Angela's been in many of my meetings when I'll walk into a meeting and someone will be talking about money. Now, profit doesn't necessarily mean just, how much money I'm going to make or anything. It just means talking about money. I walk into a meeting and people are talking about money, and that's the first thing they're talking about. We stop the meeting. We simply stop the meeting. Because if you're talking about in a meeting where you're trying to motivate people or you're trying to be motivated, it really starts with a vision. It doesn't start with money. It starts with a vision. What do we see? How do we want to grow? Or what do we really want to do? What's your vision? And then we work at the vision, then finding that vision being challenged. That's another thing. There aren't a lot of people that like their vision being challenged, right? I know my wife doesn't. She doesn't like me challenging her at all. Emily, don't be frowning now. It's only the truth. It's only the truth. But not only challenging, but also being challenged. So what comes out of that vision and challenge is something that's much better often than their initial vision. And then being able to communicate and connect with people on that vision. And then aligning yourself with it. Making sure that the team members who are involved are all in line with that vision. And then the last leadership step is execute on that vision. So that's how we operate. That's how Phil Long operates. It may be a little bit different than what you see on television. I'm not sure what your vision of us is, but I could tell you that that reaches about every employee we have. That process. I want to start by telling you a little story. Anybody like stories here? Tell you a little story. This story is about a kid. He was born kind of a normal kid to a middle class family. He had one brother who happened to be a twin, 3 sisters, good Christian family, and really good Christian parents. At 4 years old, he contracted a very rare lung disease. The disease was pre-penicillin days, and it was a disease that rarely did anybody ever survive. Well, this little boy spent 3 months in the hospital. And you can just imagine a 4-year-old spending 3 months in the hospital. And with dedicated doctors and nurses, he survived it. But he also survived. He also survived it because he was pampered so much while he was in the hospital. The nurses got to really liking this little kid. He was called, when he got out of the hospital, a miracle baby. And he lived with that. He lived with that for quite a while, the miracle baby. Can you imagine a 4-year-old thinking, oh, I'm a miracle baby? Well, what the consequence to that is that if I'm that different, how do I as a human being operate as a 4-year-old? Well, one consequence was that he was pampered by women, not by, all family members, of course, at 4 years old, but he's pampered by his mother and his sisters and his aunts and all the other women that come and see him. He was pampered and touted upon. Now, his dad took a different approach to him. This boy's dad took a different approach because I think his dad saw that pampering this 4-year-old or 6-year-old, wasn't what he wanted. So my dad, or his dad, I'm sorry, screwed up, see? His dad challenged him. His dad didn't tell him, he just challenged him. He challenged him in scholastics, and he's challenged him in everything that a little boy should be challenged in, including athletics. So he had both. He had a mother who touted over him, and he had a father who challenged him. Quite a deal. Another consequence to the illness is that during the course of his life, he never believed he'd ever reach 21 years old. He always thought, as a young boy and growing up and becoming a teenager, that at 20 or 21, that was life for him. And that was supported by the fact that every time his brother or he got a flu or got a sickness, he got 3 or 4 times sicker. Every time. Brother would get flu or get a cold, this kid would end up in the hospital. So he knew for sure that he wasn't going to be long for this world. And so what did he do? The kid played sports. He kind of like, I think you just touched on it, he did everything he could. He was honoring school. He gave the nuns hell. They had those clothes. As a matter of fact, I'll just tell you one little story about this kid because I knew him. They blew up the lab. Somebody blew up the laboratory. I'm not talking about the restrooms. I'm talking about the science lab. They blew up the lab. This kid was sitting in a math class when it happened, and it took about 2 minutes for the principal to come in, yank him out of the class, and accuse him of firing up the lab class. Not bombing it, but causing a fire. Let's put it that way. He had a heck of a lot of explaining to do, but he couldn't get it done because even though he was sitting in the front of the class, and the class was about this size, and the nun was sitting there watching him, she would not attest to the fact that he was there when the lab was blown up. So during the course of high school, he played football, and he pretty good athlete. He played basketball, not basketball. He played baseball, and he ran track. Only lost one track meet of all the track meets he ever ran, and he ran a lot of them, only lost one. And the one he lost that no one knew about was the one he actually took a dive on. And what I mean by that is when there was so much intensity to win, and you never lost a race, and it was an individual race. Track is an individual; it's not team. It's individual. You've never lost. He used to run the 440. And when you lose that, and you know when the gun goes off that you're not going to win, that he on the second to last turn fell and took a fall, and was burned up with all the cinders, and only to be pampered again because the girls would pick him up. Yes, he was cute. Yeah, he was a cute kid then. The girls would pick him up, they put him on the bench, and then he played on cinders. And the cinders tore into his skin, his arms, his legs, everything. And so the rest of the day was spent taking all these cinders out of him. Only one person knew, besides him, that he took a dive, and that was his coach. And his coach never said a word to anyone until about the 20th class reunion. And then he was exposed at that time. At any rate, this boy wanted to go to the University of Colorado upon graduation. And his dad, who knew him pretty well, said, "Son," because he felt this kid thought he could play college football. His dad knew better. His dad says, "Look, I'll tell you what. I'll send you to University of Colorado, but you first have to go to the Trinidad Junior College, and then if you do well there, I'll send you to University of Colorado." This boy rebelled, and what did he do? He joined the Marines, not the Air Force or Navy or Army. He joined the Marines, and he was showing his dad. Well, 3 months after he joined, and while he was in boot camp, his dad died. He was 18 years old. And this is why I didn't want to talk about myself. Anyway, his father died, and the only thing he thought, he had 2 more years. Remember, he had a timetable of living about 20 years old. And his dad died when he was 18, so he had 2 more years. And while he was in the Marine Corps, he volunteered for everything he could volunteer for. He jumped out of planes, went to cold weather training, everything he could possibly do, putting himself in harm's way, he did. And then he got out of the Marine Corps, and he says, "You know what? If I could," and that was at 20. So he thought, hey, maybe I'm going to live anyway, or after all. So he began then, he went back and did what his father wanted him to do initially, go to junior college, and then worked 2 jobs doing it, then went to University of Denver, worked his way through, and never played a sport. His entire life turned around from having fun and games and the worry and concern about ending his life early to one of, I'm going to live. And so then that began, after college began, I guess I didn't tell you. That boy was me. Did I tell you that? Yeah, I think I did. I'm sorry. Anyway, after college, or after the Marine Corps, he went to college, and then he became really focused on his life and what he was going to do with his life. And by that time, he'd met Emily. Emily taught him the basics of business. She taught me the difference between a debit and a credit. And it was tough. It was really tough. I remember she spent hours doing that. Right, Em? Yeah. But I learned the difference between a debit and a credit, and I went on to business school. And then from there, I got in the car business when I was 29 years old, and in 39, I was recruited by Phil Long, and I came to Colorado Springs with my 4 kids and Emily. Is there any questions? Anybody have any questions for me, right? Yes. Yes, Bob. Bob, sorry? My twin brother? Oh, well, first of all, we're still great friends. My twin brother is entirely different than me. And, he was known, when we were little kids, we always compare. With twins, they always compare, especially if they're boys or they're girls. He was always known as the nice twin. Now, no one ever says I was the bad twin, but they always indicated he was the nice twin. He lives here in Colorado Springs. He's retired. And he used to work for us until he retired. And we're really good friends. But we're entirely different people. Anybody else have any other questions? Well, the next part of my life then was being really productive. I thought that in life's even then I felt that life's fleeting. The lifespan is very fleeting. So I figured that I had X amount of time to really maximize what we were going to do, and I again never put money in front of anything. It was about passion. It was about passion to provide a way of life for me and my family. I got in the car business in Pueblo when I was 29, and at 39 I was recruited by Phil Long. So and that was in 1975, and at that time we had one car dealership, and we had about 150 or 160 employees at the time. It was important that in my life, and as I raised my family, that integrity was an absolutely important issue in everything we did. And that was one of the reasons why we left Santa Fe. When I was recruited, Phil Long actually did take 6 or 7 months to recruit me, and I really did like Santa Fe. But I could not see ourselves raising our children in Santa Fe. So we came to Colorado mostly because of the opportunity it afforded me and our family, but also because it gave our kids a greater opportunity than living in Santa Fe. Also, because I've always considered Colorado Springs as a giving community, a great community. It was, if you think of life as offense and defense, that was an offensive move on my part to really create a real opportunity for my family. At first, when I first joined Phil Long, I wasn't sure that I had the mental capacity to run a large Ford dealership. Because at the time I was running a small Pontiac Buick dealership in Santa Fe, and in the 80s, Ford franchise, it got even tougher. As a matter of fact, Ford, if you had any of those back in the 80s, they were kind of mediocre cars, and so the Ford franchise began to kind of not fade away, but lose a lot of momentum. The oval began to get stained, and so. We didn't have much choice. I didn't feel much choice. So we went out and worked to get Asian franchises. That was kind of a defensive move. So that if Ford didn't succeed, and GM didn't later on, so it was partly true that it could have failed. Ford could have. They didn't, but it could have. That I would make sure that we had some other franchises to support our people and ourselves. At 39, and that's when I got here, I left behind a life that changed from being a youth to being really an adult. I think really seriously, from my perspective, my adulthood really started about that age, because I kept looking back at my youth a lot more in my early or my 20s and even 30s. recognize too that there are limitations that people put on themselves. They're mostly the self limitations. I was fortunate to have Emily, my wife of 53 years now, a fabulous family. Gina, I've got 4 children, 2 girls, 2 boys. Gina, who is the president of Mount Carmel Health and Wellness. Vince is my oldest son. He's the GM of Audi. And Mike is a VP of our operations. And my daughter, Lori. And I was also fortunate to have, during the course of this time, good health and wellness and a strong faith and a great, great team to operate with. At that time, it was the time of 75. Phil Long was about 30 years old. Today it's 69 years old. We had about 120 employees, as I said. Today the company has about 850 employees. We're the large privately owned automotive company in Colorado, and we were doing pretty well until the recession. The recession hit, and we lost 10 dealerships, partly because of GM's bankruptcy. We lost all of our Saturn stores, and we lost Chrysler due to their bankruptcy, and then some Asian franchises we just felt like we had to, we got rid of. We essentially lost 10. We lost about 250 employees during that course of time, and we lost millions. And you can imagine what one might think about survival at that time. They were really, really dire times. But we had a great team, great people. We worked real hard. We put a strategy together. We had some people who believed in us, like bankers, financial backing, and we survived. And subsequently, we grew after that. We grew to now we've got a couple more franchises. We have Chevrolet. You might know we bought Daniels. It's now Doenges-Long Chevrolet. We bought a Toyota store, and we've done some more growing besides that. So the survival, the toughest of all times, we came out of it, and we grew our franchise. It's very important that businesses, or at least the way I see it, that they have to really you have to have such a structure with people that it has to be able to survive the most difficult of times. And we were happy to know that we did that. Now to talk about some of the growth and some of the things we did. In Motor City, when we got there, Motor City was already 30-some years old. I don't know if you're aware of this, but it was the first Motor City in the country. Phil Long was part of that. Phil Long was a great visionary. But by the time I got there, it was getting a little bit haggard, and the city was growing northeast. And it became pretty evident to me that in due time, the city or the franchises might move to this part of town. This part of town didn't exist. This building was built in '86. In '75, it was just country. And so the town started moving, and the result was that in order to really make sure that we were viable, and that Phil Long, we've always had a great love for the name Phil Long, that dealership would never go away. I was motivated to buy 30 acres of land that took us up to 8th Street. And all that development caused us to bring some friends with us. We brought Red Nolan, Huberger, Acura, Cooney Lexus, Daniels Chevrolet. It also allowed our company later on to grow with Mercedes-Benz, Audi, and now Chevy. So even though it was a defensive move and it was built based on survival, it really had a long-term effect of staying viable for years to come. And that's always been part of what I've always wanted. It wasn't what was so important today, but what about tomorrow too? We also played defense in Chapel Hills. At that time, Phil Long owned Academy Ford, and Ford Motor Company was putting pressure on Phil Long to get rid of it. Phil was getting at that age. The store wasn't doing that well, And then they were threatening, not threatening. I shouldn't use the word threatening, but they were earmarking to put another Ford dealership a little bit further northeast here. So my defensive move was to build Chapel Hills, that little motor city in Chapel Hills. So we moved Academy Ford off of Academy, moved it up to Chapel Hills, moved our Kia store there, our Hyundai store there, value car store there, and then we brought friends with us. We brought the Chevrolet. We sold some land to Chevrolet, and we have now a viable campus that's northeast. Now that has kept us from Ford Motor Company from putting the third Ford store there. And as long as we do our job, then we'll be able to maintain that. We did play offense in one area where I remember being challenged by Ford dealers in Denver saying, you guys do really well in Colorado Springs, but you can't sell cars in Denver. It's too tough. Denver's much too tough. So I took that as a challenge, and we bought a car company called Colorado Car and Truck. There were 11 Ford dealers there, and of the 11 Ford dealers, this dealership was the 11th one. So we scraped the bottom of the barrel when we bought this dealership. We bought it in 1985. We built that dealership to where it was at in one particular part of the town. We moved it to Wadsworth. We are now, that Ford store is the #1 Ford store in the state of Colorado. So we're really proud of that. In order to build and succeed in business, we must always build with our people, with the knowledge that a lot of people have that are in the industry, we have the slowest rate of turnover in the industry. Our people really love us. A lot of reasons. We do not only pay them well, but we have our own healthcare clinic over there. We have workout rooms. We have places where people can, and we really dwell on wellness, even in our dealerships. In the 80s, we began to see the need to help the homeless, and we worked with the Gracio Housing. You may remember them. They were building housing for the homeless. We began helping them by running. We put a campaign together that stated a run for the homeless, and we raised thousands and thousands of dollars for the Gracio. So that was our move to start, working with the poor. We then began working with the homeless. We then began working with children, and I was never thought we were quite capable of dealing with children on an in-depth level. So what did we do? We built 11 playgrounds. 11 playgrounds, 2 football fields, and one state-of-the-art skating rink right here in Colorado Springs. We didn't do that alone. We worked with Mike Shanahan and the Denver Broncos, and so with that partnership and the city of Colorado Springs and other cities too. We didn't only operate in Colorado Springs, we also operated in Denver and some of the other counties, and the cities joined with us in partnerships to do this. We also have been involved with the Marion House. The time I got involved in that Marion House, they were serving about 400 people a day. The new Marion House serves about 800 people a day. So we're really proud of that we can help those people. And that's a work of labor of love, where the Marion House really helps people with a hand up rather than a hand out. So we're really proud of that. And then we turned our in the last 5 or 6 years, we turned our attention over to a really poor community that I grew up in, that I feel has been victimized for about 100 years, and that's Trinidad. We bought a crumbling Catholic church. It had been vacant for over 10 years or so. The roof, one of the roofs had caved in from snow. And it was, I mean, it was terrible. It was just terrible to look at. Emily and I bought it, and Emily used to ask me, well, what are you going to do with it, Jay? Now, here's a businessman that should say, here's what we're going to do with it, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. I would say, I really don't know yet. And for a long time, we didn't know. All I knew when we bought that is that it served the community so well that whatever we did with it, it would serve the community again. That's all I knew. But we didn't have the how-tos when I bought it. Today, it serves 100% of the population. It's called Mount Carmel Health, Wellness, and Community Center. And it serves the community beautifully. We have an integrated care, health care with the docs and all. We have wellness programs that you'll only find in larger cities. And we're able to recruit a former priest who was actually educated in wellness and worked for the Veterans Hospital in Florida, brought him back home. And he now conducts the wellness programs in Trinidad and elsewhere too, Colorado. So today, my energy is tempered. I'm more thoughtful and a lot wiser. Right, Em? She agrees with me on some things. So our plans are to develop and plan to continue to give back to the community, beginning with Mr. Phil Long's legacy and continuing with the brand we built. We strive to foster a culture of people serving people and giving back to the community. My desire is for this legacy to continue with my children, my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren, and so on. Building a business within the automotive industry has allowed me the opportunity, or us, the opportunity to enhance people's lives. The business is about people serving people. When you do that right, it allows you a certain amount of success to give back to the community. After coming to Phil Long, I was able to continue building Mr. Long's legacy. Mr. Long, if you may not know him, was a decorated war hero. He was a naval pilot who flew 122 missions off the USS Enterprise, and he landed 120 times. So what happened to the two? He crashed, but he survived. And so what we've done, we recently, in honoring him as a war hero, we have built a beautiful water feature memorial at Fort Carson Resilience Center that will be there for many years to come as a reminder of his legacy. The automotive industry has allowed me to start my own family's legacy with Mount Carmel Health and Wellness Community Center in my hometown in Trinidad, and soon to be Mount Carmel Wellness of Colorado here in Colorado Springs. It'll be aligned with Trinidad's, but separate from. It'll serve the community in the best in class, or Trinidad does serve the community in a best in class facility. The one in Colorado Springs that we'll be building will also be best in class in terms of services. So, being successful over the years in business has allowed me to give back, helping other people. And we are humbled by it. We're honored by it. We're able to, a guy like me who, at one time, that little kid, what we're talking about? That honoring little kid who never believed he'd be over 20 years old, live over 20 years old, has been able to do all this. So I must tell you that none of it came easy, but it was with passion, and it's come with hard work, but it's come with people that through the years, we all have become better. Everyone that's been working with me on my team or outside my team are better because of it, because we have helped others. And that isn't true just in the health and wellness business. Let's face it, if you're going to be successful in the car business, that's what you have to do too. That's where we learned. I want to tell you one little story about maybe the difference between what we expect out of a car dealer versus what we expect from someone who fixes clocks. Can I tell that one story yet? Okay. Emily and I, 5 weeks ago, brought our tick-tock clock to get fixed. You know, it's not an antique. This is one that has one of those little units in it. That was 5 weeks ago. We haven't got it back yet. She called a couple of days ago, and they says it's still not in, and we're not sure when we're going to have it for you. Now, if you brought your car in, if you brought your car in for anything, and we told you that, you think you'd be standing here? So we do serve the customer, and as long as we can serve the customer, and exceed your expectation in everything we do, then we'll continue to serve you and to continue to serve the community. Thanks. Any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Tell us more about Phil Long.
Phil Long?
Where did he come from?
Great human being. Okay, I will. I'll tell you. First of all, Phil Long was born and raised in Ponca City, Oklahoma. His father was a lawyer and had worked with car dealers. Never being a car dealer, but worked with car dealers. And Phil was very fortunate when he got out of the Navy. For the store's name was not Vidmar, was Doenges. No, yeah, well, that was Doenges. They changed it. Anyway, they bought this Ford store in 1945. He and a guy by the name of Doenges became partners, and that partnership lasted until Phil moved to Motor City, and the name went from Doenges-Long to Phil Long. And as a person, as a human being, he was the most gentle human being you ever seen. At one time, I understand he was an extrovert. When I knew him, and I knew him for 30-some years, he became an introvert. When I asked him, and we became very good friends. He was like my father, and I was like his son. I mean, seriously. The one thing he would never talk about were his missions. He would never talk about his missions. You know, if you think about a naval pilot, a World War II naval pilot, flying off, I mean, he's out there doing some destruction, but he would never, ever talk about that. He was a great guy. He was a philanthropist and a visionary, and one that we honor. As a matter of fact, it would be really easier for us to have called Phil Long any other name, Colorado Springs Ford or anything. Having his name on that board, on the billing, on everything we do, means that we're also stewards of his name, and the family's allowed that for us. Great guy. Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate you giving us the time to tell our story. Thank you.